This is the story of my daughter Ivy. She was born on January 22nd on a day that stood out amongst many others in a very dreary and cold January, but the day was brighter than all the others that month. I remember that will forever be in my memory as a light kind of shining from above on that day.
Welcome to Still a Part of Us, a place where moms and dads share the story of their child who was stillborn or who died in infancy. I'm Winter.
And I'm Lee. We are grateful you joined us today. Please note that this is a story of loss and has triggers.
Thanks to our lost parents who are willing to be vulnerable and share their children with us.
If you're listening to this podcast, just know that on our YouTube channel there are pictures and videos that are related to the stories that are being shared.
Subscribe and share it with a friend that might need it, and tell them to subscribe. Why? Because people need to know that even though our babies are no longer with us, they're still a part of us.
Well, thank you, Matt, for coming and talking with me about your wonderful daughter, Ivy. We talked a little bit before. We reminisced about gaming and all that fun jazz. But for the audience, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where you guys are living, where you're living.
Sure.
Couple hobbies.
So I'm currently separated. So Sharon, my ex-wife and I, we did end up getting a divorce. However, we were married at the time of Ivy's birth, and at the time, spent a lot of time working. I was actually a sales engineer for a company that manufactures battery backup appliances downtown Chicago, and was a sales engineer and pretty good at my job. I had a lot of commuting though. I did a lot of commuting from the Chicago western suburbs to downtown Chicago every day. So I was out of the house for about 10 hours out of the day, every Monday through Friday throughout the week. But
you don't have a Chicago accent, so
no, that's for sure. Yeah. I'm glad I didn't pick that up. Although I do love a good Chicago dog. So
yeah, I was going to say, are you a Cubbies or a Sox fan?
I'm a Sox guy, South side for sure.
Well, good. Well, I'm a Cubbies fan, so.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
That's okay. I'll forgive you.
Hey, that's okay. Salt Lake might actually get a team if the expansion goes our way.
So, I was hearing about that.
Yeah, I'd have to give up my Cubbies if Salt Lake gets a team. So yeah. So you're living in Chicago. You're commuting downtown.
Well, I was commuting downtown. I'm actually living in Lisle right now. So which is a western suburb of Chicago with my parents until I can afford a place of my own, hopefully. Yeah. Sometime in the near future. But my parents were kind enough to at least take me back in for now while we're going through we went through the divorce process. So we are officially divorced. But that's something I'll also elaborate on, especially when we talk about the advice, because what led to the divorce, a lot of circumstances surrounding the healing process, which I think trying to kind of jump in the gun a little bit here, but I'll have a lot of advice as far as what to do, what not to do. I think I have a lot of things I want to share about that for other parents that might be struggling right now and looking for some guidance. There's ways you want to heal together. And
now, just to let everybody know, Sharon actually reached out to you. She first of all reached out to us to see if she could record about Ivy. And then she told you, so you guys do still have a friendly relationship with each other.
Very much so.
And that is, I think, very wonderful. So, I'm grateful that you guys are able to be on and talk about your daughter. So, both separately, but both able to. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a co-parenting strategy that we want to keep up, for our kids, and for Orion and for Fiona, our two oldest that are with us. Living with Sharon full time, but there's a possibility also that Sharon and I are trying to repair a relationship, and I'm hoping maybe things can work out because we're going through counseling right now to work out a lot of things that we should have done early on through the separation process, but I was struggling with other things, addiction primarily. So that's something that can also discuss later. But it's
the tapestry of life it was woven with many different threads. So
yes, very much so, very much so.
you were telling me that you built your own PC, so
Yeah, absolutely. I
know,
know. I'm
you
just
got it.
got a just put this one new together myself. My brother and I have always been big kind of computer nerds. My dad got us started when we were early on because he had gone back to school for computer engineering and programming. So at the time, when I was about 7 or 8 years old, I was lucky enough to watch him, put in IDE cables and SCSI cables and all the old school cables that you don't see, all the old ribbon cables and stuff.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
getting to experiment with all that at an early age. I'm trying to do the same thing with Fiona and Orion right now too, and get them interested. And because I think the future is going to be in coding and in IT. As long as have a little grasp on coding and IT, then they'll be set in life. So
When the computers take over the world, you got to learn how to, yeah, either help them or dismantle them, right?
right, you yeah,
You know,
have to be on their side. That's for sure.
yeah.
Once that
That's why
singularity hits.
that's why I always say please and thank you to our smart assistant.
Oh gosh, I do the same thing with my Google.
Will you please tell me the time?
Oh, thank you, Google. I appreciate that. Please don't kill
You're
me.
very welcome. Please don't delay any of my packages.
Exactly.
Well, wonderful. Just to let everybody know, Ivy was born in 2017, correct? You're coming
Yeah, she was
upon
born
her
January 22nd, 2017.
Yeah, we're coming up on 6 years, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be
Yeah.
6 years, so 7 years actually. So it'll
7
be
years?
seven
Oh yeah,
years.
it's
Yeah, 7
2024.
years on the 22nd. I can't believe it.
Yeah,
It's flown by. It seems like
yeah.
just yesterday.
I forgot it was
We're
2024.
I know. I keep thinking it's 2023 still
Yeah.
myself as well. So
So,
I still write that on all my reports at work. So
well, buy yourself a couple days, right?
yeah, yeah.
Well, wonderful. Well, Matt, we talked about at the time of Ivy's death, you had two other children.
Mhm.
You and Sharon. What did you guys like to do as a family at the time?
So we spent a lot of time inside, actually. Sharon and I were both big gamers, so
Yeah.
we were playing a lot of World of Warcraft at the time. I would take my son and daughter out Pokemon hunting, going
Oh,
playing Pokemon Go. Loved going for walks along the Riverwalk downtown Naperville. Actually, it was
yeah.
absolutely beautiful. And I still do that too with my son occasionally. I'll take him down there and just go walk along the riverfront, especially in the winter.
Yeah.
I'm a big winter person, so
Yeah, me too.
I love just getting that crisp cold air and just I don't know, there's something different about the winter than the summer that I like better. So
Yeah.
I like being out in the cold air and taking my kids out, going for walks. Something I need to probably do a little bit more frequently now too, but
Yeah.
putting on a little bit of weight, so haven't been going for those walks as much. But yeah, we loved going for walks as a family, going out in the fall, going to the pumpkin patch,
Oh,
going
nice.
on rides and whatnot. So we took advantage of all the local fairs that DuPage County had to offer, getting out when we could. But I'd say for the most part, we were kind of homebodies.
Yeah.
We enjoyed spending a lot of time inside. I know Sharon's a big bookworm, and
Yeah.
she loves reading her books. And I love to escape in my video games and my RPGs. I'm a huge RPG person, as I was saying.
Yeah.
So I got Orion, my son, who's our middle child, and Fiona, my oldest daughter. They're big gamers now too. My daughter Fiona is actually getting into Fortnite now, so she's
Oh,
keeps
yeah.
texting me her rank and her progress throughout the game and everything. I'm just absolutely amazed because they're already surpassing my skills. So, as a father, as a
Yeah.
gamer myself, I'm quite proud. It's just good to see them kicking
Yeah.
off, and I try to instill a sense of pride in them, and you know, let them know that they're doing a good job, and it's good for their psyche as
Oh,
well.
yeah.
I think
Yeah.
to have that sense of pride and grow up knowing that they're accomplishing something because you got to instill both sides. You got to make sure that there's a strict enforcement of getting your work done when you need to get it done,
Yeah.
and then there's also
The
the
work
time
hard, play
spent
hard.
work hard, play hard. Thank you. Yeah, see that
Yeah.
sums it up perfectly. That's
Yeah.
exactly it.
Yep.
So, and they're playing hard, and I try to help them out as much as possible. So
Yeah.
I know Ivy would have been an excellent gamer too if she was with us here. So I know
yeah,
she'd be right there with them. So
she'd have the sibling rivalry.
oh my
Yeah, and
gosh,
then she'd
yeah,
have to yeah, the sibling rivalry is very, very true. So
yeah, absolutely.
so
I have that a lot between my brother and I too. So Mhm.
yeah, I have 5 sisters, and
Oh my goodness.
they are all perfect, and it was very apparent that I was not very much anything like any of them. They were all smart and talented and beautiful, and here I was the troll. I was
Oh,
the
you're
troll.
still
I
there.
was the troll of the
You're
family.
amongst them too.
But I will say this: some of my sisters have a pretty good beard, like me. But
Oh, okay, nice.
I do up them on the beard. Um, but let's go back to 2017. Were
Yeah,
you and Sharon planning for a third child, or was Ivy
we
sort of
weren't.
a happy?
Ivy was a bit of a surprise to both of
Yeah,
us. For me, necessarily, I think my first initial reaction was shock, and I was really worried
yeah,
actually because at the time we were kind of struggling financially, and my initial concern was, financially, how are we going to be able to support 3 children?
yeah,
It was right around that time that I also advanced in my position at work, so that kind of came as a blessing. But my
yeah,
initial reaction was shock.
yeah,
I was really scared, honestly.
yeah,
How we were going to be able to provide for all 3 of our children and give them a life that they deserve,
yeah. That
especially based on one salary. Because
yeah,
I was the only one working at the time, and just having enough money to supply for the kids was my primary concern. But then, once that baby bump started forming and I felt her kicking and everything, your whole mindset changes.
yeah.
Nothing else matters in the world
You'll
except
figure
for her.
something. Yeah, you'll
Exactly.
figure
Everything's just
something.
gonna fall into place.
Yeah,
So
everything
it's
will
not
be
worth
okay.
yeah, it's not worth worrying about all the money and the finances and all that stuff like I was. And in hindsight now, it's all silly. As I've matured, I've realized that everything works itself out, and
Yeah,
it's really not worth trying to spend too much time worrying about all that.
yeah.
Just enjoy the time that you have with your child. Is
And
really
as a
what it comes
child,
down to.
I can't remember, growing up, I just had
Mhm.
fun being, and
Mhm.
I'm sure my parents were just as concerned as I am now with my children,
Yeah,
but I'm sure my kids are just like, "Yeah, look at this stick I found. This is the best thing in the world. Look
absolutely.
at these
I was
rocks." It's like, you know, they could care less about a 401k or, you know?
right. Exactly.
So,
I
yeah.
watched this skit recently that had these. It was funny. It had these 2 moms talking about how they failed at creating dinner. It showed both perspectives, both from the mom and the children. At first, the
Oh,
moms
yeah.
were talking like, "I can't believe I put together this horrible meal for our children. I just basically dumped out a plate of tortilla chips and poured cheese on it and served it to the family." And the other mom's like, "Oh, that's nothing." And then she told her story. Then it panned over to the kids, and the kids are like, "My mom made the best dinner the other night. It was all chips and just a mountain of cheese." And the other kid's like, "Whoa, that's
Oh, man.
awesome!" I'm thinking,
I wish my mom would do
that.
that.
Yeah, right, exactly. That's what matters the most. It's
Yeah,
the little things.
yeah.
It's like the cats playing with boxes more than the toys that are in the boxes.
Yeah,
I always like making that analogy.
yeah.
So,
I just remember because I've been trained as a chef, and I've made
oh,
macaroni and cheese and stuff, the fancy stuff with the bacon and the crumbles and the bechamel
yeah,
cheese sauce. And my kids love that. And then as we're walking down the groceries aisle, they'll see a box of Kraft. They're like, "We love that Kraft macaroni and cheese." And you're like, "I'll make you some macaroni." And they're just like
right.
eating it up like what? I've spent 3 hours on the mac and cheese that I made you, and and here you get this box crap for 45 cents, and you love it so much more.
Right,
So
that labor of love that you think that's
yeah,
gonna go into it, right.
yeah. So
Yeah,
well,
that's
good.
funny.
So you were at first there was a little bit of interpretation, but then
Mhm.
as you said, the baby bump came, and
Yeah,
of course you just fell in love with with your little baby daughter Ivy.
Absolutely. Snuggling up at night and just feeling her kicks and all that over time as she slowly grew. And, we got the 4D scans done, I think, with all of our children. And, we look at the facial structure and everything. And, like I said, she had kind of my upper half, like my forehead, my brow, my eye structure. And then she had Sharon's lower half, like the nose, the mouth section. So it was perfect. She was like a perfect mix of both of us. But I think out of all three of my children, the overall facial structure, she looked the most like me. Wow. So it's a lot of mixed emotions that go into it.
Yeah.
Because I personally delivered Ivy as well. So I'll always remember her face as soon as she was brought into the world. Those images were forever instilled into my memory. So.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the pregnancy. Was it an easy pregnancy for Sharon, or was there issues?
Easiest of the three, for sure. Only because she spent the least time in labor. I know she started her contractions the day before.
Well, let's talk about like the process of the pregnancy. The scans, the 20-week scans. Did you guys figure out Ivy's gender, or?
No, we wanted to leave Ivy a surprise.
You wanted to leave her a surprise.
Yeah, if I recall, Ivy was a surprise. Ivy was a surprise up until the moment that she was born.
Until she was born.
I didn't want to know. I remember that. I did not want to know until she was born. So we had scans done.
Yeah.
We had the 4D scans done. That's how I saw the facial structure and everything. And about a week before she was due, Sharon was in a minor car accident. Just a little fender bender. And, we didn't end up getting scanned or going to see if there was anything wrong after the accident then. And it's something that I have a slight regret in my head, because I almost wonder that week before, when she was still alive, had we gone and had I actually pushed Sharon to go get a scan done at the hospital after that it was just a fender bender, so you never really think too much of it. Very minor accident. But it's something that lingers in my head, because it's what if and the what ifs are what kill us all as parents of children that that have been lost. The what ifs are the hardest part. And that's one of the big what ifs in my head, is what if I had pushed her to go get a scan? Would they have seen that the umbilical cord was wrapped around her neck 4 times? Was it even wrapped around her neck at that time? I don't know. But ultimately, that was what we determined what caused Ivy's loss. She had the umbilical cord wrapped around her neck about 3.5 times when she came out. So I think about that a lot. If what if we had gotten that done? But again, you can't linger on that. You can't linger on the what ifs or stay there too much, because then you get lost, and that's a lot of that can lead you down a dark path, for sure. It led me down a very dark path myself. So
it's the introspective of looking back and saying, "Oh, we should have done this. We could have done this." It does lead you down a terrible path, because then you start beating yourself up for not doing things or for doing things, it's not a helpful, healthy thing sometimes. So
no. And I always recommend people talk about it as much as possible. Get it out. Always, as always, I wish everybody in the world would see a therapist. It would make the world a much better place, just to share your feelings and all that. But I think it's important to share those things, but don't linger on them. Like you said, don't beat yourself up over them. You can't.
Talking about it,
hurt you.
I'm a big proponent of therapy as well. Talking about it, understanding it, and all that is very healthy. I guess we should talk about the labor and what happened.
Yeah,
I guess we're at that point.
That's the part of my memory that will always be burned in. I say burned in, but it's cemented in my head forever. I have those images that play out in my mind like frames. I remember waking up in the morning and Sharon was laying on her side trying to get as much sleep as possible, and then she went into the bathroom and ended up taking a nice hot bath. And I think that's what really got Ivy to kind of want to come out more, or at least Sharon's body to push her out because
Now we should say
that
that this is 40 weeks, right? Sharon's
this is
40
40
weeks
weeks.
40 weeks
Hmm.
pregnant, so she's
Right.
ready. Ivy's ready, so
Ivy's ready. Oh yeah, she was ready, and unfortunately, Ivy she had already been deceased at that point. We didn't know it at the time. We had no idea. And I remember she was in the bathroom, and I had been packing the bags on our bed to get ready to go to the hospital. So I had basically carried the bags down the stairs. I remember I was kind of like, "Ooh, this is exciting! Here she's come,
yeah.
she's ready," and had plenty of time to just drive to the hospital and have an easy birth, just like my other two children. So I got the bags out to the car, came back inside, and to my horror, kind of at the moment, and also very surprised, Sharon was on all fours in the kitchen in the middle of labor, and Ivy's head was already coming out. And I just remember seeing, and this will forever be in my memory, her lips just being this absolute black color, and her eyes a dark silver, like a silver haze to them. And I'll always remember her like that. And it was horrifying because I knew at that moment that she was gone. It's really hard to talk about because it's just I want to remember her like differently, but I can't because I personally delivered her. I walked over after I got back inside and I saw her um, help deliver her. Basically, Sharon was on all fours and her pants down, and I held Ivy in my hands. I just knew at that moment that she was gone, and I wanted to do something, anything to bring her back, to see her breathe, just see some movement in her eyes or something. And I had to accept right there, that she was gone, and I went into shock. My mind went into this place that athletes describe as like being in the zone, and I immediately called 911 and went into this just a moment of extreme focus you can't describe.
Yeah.
It's you just go on autopilot. You're not even in control. Like your primal instinct, something deep inside that exists takes over, and you don't even have like conscious flow of thought. It's just this weird primal state. And I ended up calling 911, holding Ivy. I gave Ivy to Sharon because her umbilical cord was still attached, and Sharon was also bleeding out at this time because she had complications. Complications. There were the lacerations of sort. I forget exactly what it was now.
Yeah.
I'm sure Sharon probably elaborated a little bit on it, but I ended up walking. I remember pacing down the stairs to the basement on the phone with 911, explaining that my daughter was just born. I think she's dead. I don't know. We need emergency services to come here immediately. See if we can revive her because at that point I didn't know how long she'd been dead.
Yeah.
She'd already been gone for over 72 hours at that point.
Yeah.
So she was already gone. There was nothing that the doctors could do. We emergency services got there relatively quickly, and I just remember there being about 8 or 9 EMTs inside there, and they were prodding Ivy with all sorts of needles in her knee, and they had her in this like incubation chamber. They were trying to bring her back by pumping it full of oxygen, and they gave her some sort of shot into her knee. I don't remember what it was, but I remember just that needle being absolutely gigantic. I'm thinking to myself, that's I don't know what that is, but I hope it does something. And all these images just float back. What you talk about it now, they just float in my head, and they're kind of like it's hard to discuss in a timely or orderly fashion because they flow back into my head in in still shots and still frames from one moment to like 20 minutes later, and then back in time another 15 minutes, and then forward in time 10 minutes. So it's kind of fragmented right now. But I remember after she had been delivered, they were doing everything they could to try to bring her back. But I could see an EMT's face, and from one of them that was also in tears too. Like,
yeah,
he knew. Everybody pretty much knew that she was gone already, but they were just trying what they could just to appease,
yeah,
just to appease us. I think, really, at that point, just to give us some sort of hope and give Sharon hope, because she was sitting there bleeding out. They needed to keep her calm.
yeah.
And I remember
Now, what were they
another
doing?
moment.
What were they doing
Go
for
ahead.
Sharon? What were they doing for Sharon? Were they?
Well, I was laying. Sharon was laying in the corner of our kitchen against the wall, against the door to the bathroom, with her legs kind of just out, very almost popping in and out of consciousness, I remember, but they weren't doing much of anything for her yet. There was one EMT that was working with her to get her to breathe. I
Yeah,
was laying back against Sharon, just in shock at that point. I had to sit down because I had been pacing for so long, in the zone, on the phone with 911, and also performing CPR on Ivy. I forgot that part. I was performing CPR on Ivy as well to try to bring her back a little bit. But I knew, and especially then when I was doing the CPR on her, looking into her eyes, seeing the glaze,
yeah,
that yellowish haze and that silvery tint in her eyes, that will forever remember her with. It's hard because I wish I could see her in a way that was more bright, her cheeks flush, like a pinky rosy color, but I can't, because I'll always remember her with that grayish tone to her skin and everything. But yeah, the EMTs eventually did get to Sharon. They started working with her, gave her an IV because she was losing a lot of blood at that point. And we ended up getting into the ambulance together. So they got her on a gurney. They got Ivy on her own gurney. And my mom was there too. Oh, I forgot this part. Yeah. My mom was there too with Orion and Fiona. And when Sharon was initially giving birth, if I go back to that for a moment, the moment when she was on all fours, basically delivering Ivy, or Ivy was coming out, and I walked over to deliver her. I yelled over to my mom. I'm like, "Mom, get the kids upstairs," because I didn't want them to see this. I didn't want them to see or have the same trauma that I had, because I knew that if they had seen Ivy in that moment, they would forever.
It would be hard.
The trauma, it would be very hard for them. And at that age, I don't think it was right for them. I wish they had, like I said, I wish they had been able to see her, but the way that she was born, it wasn't right. It wasn't right. They didn't need to go through that level of trauma. So I think my daughter Fiona, my oldest, holds a little bit of resentment for that, because she feels like she wanted to see Ivy. I think I made the right decision though by not letting her and my mom taking them upstairs. But she had them upstairs so that they didn't know what was going on. All they saw was the ambulances coming out.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm pitching something. They saw the ambulances come over, and all the EMTs come inside. And my mother-in-law, when she arrived, there was a police officer that was at the door, and she was trying to keep her out. And I looked, kind of peeked over my countertop, and I saw her kind of trying to push her way through the police officer's way, and she was reaching for her baton. I said, "Let her in. That's her mother." And I pointed to Sharon. And the police officer kind of looked back. I said, "Let her in now," because I was in the shock moment. And she came in and she just screamed. And and she's a very strong woman. I mean, Sharon's mom she's been like an executive for a lot of high-end companies, and very, very strong-willed, kind of like the Tiger Mom, I always say. She's very much like that. And hearing her let out that scream,
that visceral
was just
scream.
so blood-curdlingly. It was odd, because you don't expect that from somebody who holds that stature, or that level of strength. But we had our immediate family there, both of our mothers at least, for the pregnancy. It was hard. We got into the ambulance. So we're kind of jumping back forwards again. I'm sorry I'm jumping all over the place. Again, it
no.
comes into my mind in these
Yeah.
frames, these still shots that jump back and forth between moments. So it's hard to organize, even though I have it all written down. But we got into the ambulance. Sharon was still on her IV. They had IV in a separate ambulance because, they had 5 or 6 EMTs in there with her trying to do everything they could. And I remember getting to the hospital. Sharon's grandmother showed up. Sharon was immediately brought up to another room. Now, Sharon didn't really know what was going on yet. I don't think she realized that Ivy was gone, only because she was kind of in this very lucid state of consciousness, and because how much blood she was losing, she was going through her own thing, and she was stabilized eventually. By the time that I arrived at the hospital, they brought Sharon upstairs. They brought myself, Sharon's mom, and Sharon's grandmother, who had also arrived to the hospital separately, into a waiting room, and we waited and waited, and it seemed like eternity. It was just probably about 10 or 15 minutes, but it seemed like hours and hours had passed, and just waiting. And finally, the doctor came in and he said, unfortunately, there's nothing we can do at this point. It appears, your daughter had passed away from asphyxiation due to a umbilical cord accident. And that was it.
Yeah.
That was it. It wasn't the end of the story, but it was like the end of my hope.
Yeah.
At that point. So I still hope that there was something that they would be able to do. A miracle.
Yeah.
And that's also the moment I absolutely lost my faith in anything. Because I used to believe in something, and now I can't anymore.
Yeah.
I lost all my faith at that moment. I thought to myself, if there is a higher power, how could they let this happen? How could they let anything like this happen? And I don't know. I've personally struggled with that ever since, and I consider myself a very militant atheist at this point because of that moment. And I hate it because I want to believe in something so bad that I can't. Logically, I just get into this fight in my head. But when that doctor came in, it was a moment that everything changed mentally. And I just got up. I held Sharon's mom's hand, and I held grandmother's hand, and we walked together to go tell Sharon the news. And we delivered that information to her, and she cried, and we all cried together, and it was a very sad moment, but it was also needed to heal, And this is what I tell everybody that's going through this: please heal together. Don't isolate. Don't go off in your own little world. Gotta heal together. Because if you don't, it'll ruin you. I wish so much in hindsight that I hadn't done so much isolation and went down such a dark path. I spent a long time abusing opiates after that, and went down a very dark path. Like I said, it destroyed everything in me as far as any sort of faith in the deity or possibility of there being anything, because now I get into this logical argument in my head that how could there be any sort of higher power that exists if they would let something like this happen? I know it's so dark and it's so dreary, but it's a logical argument I get into in my head now, and it's one of my thoughts that I constantly go through after Ivy's death. And I just think to myself, if there is a higher power, how could you let something like this happen? I keep hearing people say stuff like, it's all part of a larger plan. And I just think to myself, that's the worst news anybody could hear, because if it is part of a larger plan, why did it have to be the death of somebody who was absolutely innocent and didn't even have a chance in this world? So it's, those moments, they just flow into my head. But after
Yeah.
After we went and told Sharon the news, we all kind of huddled up and did our crying together, and just remembered Ivy. We got her baptized. We did get her baptized at the request of my mother-in-law and my mom and my dad. They're still very much religious, and we wanted to honor that. And heaven forbid if there is something after this. I just wanted her to be prepared to go there and at least be baptized. At least if I'm not saved, if there is something after all this, I just wanted her to be saved. So
Now, I do have to say this, out of respect for you, this is your story. So I know there's going to be people who will listen to this who will get upset about your personal views.
yeah,
So this is
and that's
your,
okay.
yeah, and I want to show you respect, and I want to empathize and sympathize with you. When I found out my son was dead, it was a very problematic spiritual crisis for myself as well.
Yeah,
And that same thought of how could a God allow something to happen. So thank you for talking about that. Thank you
yeah,
for opening up about that, because
yeah,
it's a very visceral, it's a very hard and heavy, and you said a couple of times, a dark path that
yeah.
we have to tread, and everybody has to tread it who has gone through this.
Everybody does, and
Yeah.
it's a path that's
It's a hard
y-
one.
if but if you have the right tools and you have the right mindset, you
Yeah.
can at least go through it together.
Yeah.
Um, that's what matters, and just going through it together. Don't
Yeah.
don't feel like you have to do it alone ever. You've always got somebody there, even if you don't have immediate family nearby or friends. There's always somebody who's going to be able to listen
Yeah.
and be there for you. So I'm hoping that at least this whole story helps. And if people get angry, I apologize again. This is just my
Yep,
belief.
this is
It's hard,
yours. This is your
right?
story. So,
But I can't comprehend it anymore. And Sharon, God bless her. I say God bless her because she still believes. I just hope that people can find some sort of strength
yeah,
to carry on throughout the loss of their child, and
yeah,
just remember the positive things. Like, I do have dreams that come to me every so often. I shared one of the dreams that I have that's kind of dark, where Ivy disappears in this lake that's very similar to like the place Eleven goes to in Stranger Things, that black viscous substance where Ivy just disappears into it. I'm digging to try to get her out and pull her back to reality, and I can't get her, and then I wake up. But I also have dreams of her, like, where I'll be sitting on a bench and she'll be playing with Orion in a park. And it's funny because, like, my mind puts together this face on her that tries best to comprehend, what she would look like
yeah,
based on, the facial features that she had from delivery. And my brain does its best job to try to put together those pictures, and it's just nice because I get to see her every once in a while. And if anybody has dreams, hang on to those, because even if they're kind of dark, or even if they go down a dark path, at least you're getting to see your child.
yeah,
At least the best way that your brain knows how. So cherish those moments, cherish those memories, and maintain your toolkit to stay sane, because that's the best way to go about it. Anyways, sorry, I digress.
Wow. So you were talking about going in and telling the news to Sharon
Yeah, to Sharon.
that there
Yeah,
was
so we
nothing that
told
could.
her the news, and Ivy ended up getting baptized right there in the room, and we got to hold her. And one of the things that we did at least get to give back, I felt like I wanted to give something back to help the medical professionals and the nurses that did so much for us. And one of the things that was given to us was what's called a cuddle cot.
Uh-huh.
I'm not
Yeah.
sure, well, a lot of people are probably familiar with this.
Yeah.
Especially that go through stillbirths, but it allows you to spend time with your child after they've left, so you've been deceased, and hold them and spend time with them. So we did get to spend a lot of time with Ivy, actually about 2 days, before she started to and leave us.
Yeah.
But you know, I think a lot of those memories that we get to cherish with her are important. That cuddle cut, my goodness, it was so important.
Yeah.
it was so important to us that we decided, we wanted to give something back. We donated a cuddle cot to Hinsdale Hospital, actually, because I know that they didn't have one.
Yeah.
So with some of the money that we received from donations and GoFundMe, we had put a lot of that towards the cuddle cot for Hinsdale Hospital. So I felt like we were at least able to give something
Yeah.
back, you know.
Yeah. Now, just to let people know, a cuddle cot it's like a cooling bassinet. So it sort of slows down the decompose process, and
Yeah,
so
exactly.
you're able to spend time with your child after they've passed away, because the cooling pumps cold water through a bassinet type thing. So
Yeah.
yeah,
It's like you said, it's like a refrigeration system for the bassinet, and slows down the decomposition process and
yeah,
allows you to spend time with your child, and it's important.
yeah,
I know that there are people that are kind of mixed on that as far as whether or not they want to spend time with their child like
yeah,
that. It's both a boon and a bane, in my
yeah,
opinion, because in one hand, you do get to spend a little bit of time with your child. In the second hand, you are going to remember them in that way.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
I remember her skin starting to darken slowly over time, and her eyes got more yellow tinted to them, as the decomposition process started. So it's hard. It's
yeah,
really hard to see your child like that, but it's also important to hold them close to you, just to get that skin to skin contact, especially for moms and dads that are grieving like that. I think that was extremely important to us. And, if you do believe in the soul, which I really still want to, even though I'm going through this whole existential crisis constantly in my head, I feel like at least if there is a soul, holding her close was able to help her release
yeah,
happily somehow, maybe.
yeah,
Um, you know, with the time that we spent after we told Sharon that she had passed, our whole family was there. Everybody showed up, from aunts and uncles, uh, friends that even came from out of state. My goodness, and I had my friend Igor from high school show up there, and even showed up just to say hi. And it was nice. It was nice to have so many people
yeah,
there, because you want to share your story so bad. You don't want your child to be forgotten. And God bless you, bless you for doing this podcast too, because getting the names out there is really something
yeah,
else. And getting these stories told, it's
yeah.
really nice. I love it.
It's our children, both living and deceased. Our children are so important to us.
Yeah,
They have written their history in our lives forever. It is an eternal bond that we have with our children. And just the fact that they have passed away doesn't mean that they are not important to us.
right.
And we just have to parent them differently.
Yeah,
The way we
that's
parent our living children and the way we parent our children who have passed away are a little different, but it's still
yeah,
parenting. It's still building a legacy with them.
absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
you know,
Because I still constantly think of Ivy, and I memorialize her and think about where she'd be now, or what kind of strengths, or things like the what-ifs.
yeah,
I do good on the what-ifs, but more of a positive what-ifs.
yeah.
From a parenting perspective, you want to see, like, what kind of strengths, what kind of weaknesses would they have?
Yeah.
What would they look like? What?
She'd be turning 7, so she'd be
hmm
what would that be, second grade? She'd be going
Second
in
grade.
first or second grade. You'd be thinking about all that,
Yeah,
the
yeah. I mean, she'd
pigtails,
be doing probably. I don't know. I like to think that she'd probably be a lot more artsy, like my daughter Fiona. Probably more tomboyish.
yeah,
I think on that side. Yeah, at least in my imagination. That's how I think she would be,
yeah,
or something tells me that she'd be that way. But yeah, well, second grade. It's hard to think about at this
yeah.
point, but yeah, yeah. It's
It's
sorry,
hard.
I'm wandering off.
It's wonderful to think, but it's also sometimes hard
Yeah.
because you think about, because my son would be going, he'd be in kindergarten now, and
Mm.
you'd think about, buying the backpacks that are too big for a kindergartner, and they cover the whole body, and you're just like, oh, sack lunches and all that, and that dream is fun to think about, but it's a reality that never will be for him, for me, for our family. But it's a happy yet sad, tinged with grief. So you got to spend 2 days in the hospital with Ivy. How was Sharon's recovery? Was she
Good. So she ended
doing
up making a
okay?
full recovery. She did get an infection, so actually I take that back. The infection was with Orion, but she did end up taking a little bit longer because of a tear that she had. But she did make a full recovery.
Yeah.
She made a full recovery. We ended up spending about was it maybe 6 or 7 days, I want to say, in total at the hospital before we ended up coming back home. And that's really what was kind of the hardest part, was coming back home, because Ivy having been delivered in our kitchen, coming back to the house and having those memories. One of the things I was drawn to that spot, and I still am, even though we're divorced. And I go over there and I help with the dishes every once in a while, because I just love being near that spot where she was. And so I'll go there and I'll do the dishes and I'll feel something. It's like a presence
connection.
that,
there's a connection.
she's still there. It's definitely a connection. It's a strong connection to that spot. And, even my son has said a couple times, sitting there in the living room, the sun comes shining in through the window, just right through. They've got ivy. They've actually got ivy plants hanging basket right in front of the front window. And so when the sun comes in, it comes in these rays between the leaves. And Orion, my son, will always say, "Oh, that's ivy," saying hi to us. And it's just a really sweet moment. And
that is so sweet.
Yeah, he's a very sweet kid. I love him so much. I love all my kids, but he's a sweetheart. He's a real sweetheart. He says things like that a lot that just get me going.
Yeah. The tender mercies of children, right?
Yeah. Oh,
they say the best things sometimes that just help.
Yeah.
You didn't know the gender. How did you come up with the name Ivy?
So Ivy was actually on our original list. We had a whole bunch of names, even names like Zelda. Being a gamer had to.
Being a gamer.
And so Ivy was one of the original names that I think we had from 2010, back when we were, or was it 2000? It was actually 2000, early 2010. Yeah. We were putting together names for Fiona, our first daughter. So we had that name left over. And I think it was because we just loved the name of the plant, and Rebecca was Sharon's idea. If I remember correctly, there was a Rebecca on her side of the family that she wanted to honor, and that's how we came up with the name Ivy Rebecca. So, yeah, but that was from our original list that we had with Fiona, if I recall correctly. So,
good. It's a beautiful name. Ivy is such a very beautiful name. So,
yeah.
And then funeral arrangements. How did you guys go about doing that for?
Oh my goodness,
Ivy?
The funeral was hard, because we picked this small casket, so waterworks are going when you're picking out the casket and getting the funeral together. But we did have a funeral service for her. This was in not Lombard, but right off of Route 83. There's something Mary Cemetery. Oh my goodness, the fact that I can't remember right now is something else, because my memories are still going into. I'm still kind of in this mode from the shock.
Yeah, sort of a survival.
From the survival, right? So I can't remember the name of the cemetery at the moment, but it was it's right off of Route 83 and Roosevelt Road over there. I know exactly. I picture it in my head. I could drive there right now with no problem. St. Mary's over there. Anyways, I remember the day being very snowy. It was actually a lot like yesterday. A lot like yesterday, where we had the snowstorm here in the Chicagoland area. Big snowstorm yesterday, and it was very much like that day. It was almost whiteout conditions. I remember showing up in my car, and I was out of it, unfortunately, because, like I said, at that time, I was also battling an addiction. So I was kind of coming in and out of it as far as battling my addiction. But I remember spending so much time with Sharon, just holding her throughout the whole service. Sharon's mom got up in front of everybody. We had a full, oh my goodness, it must have been at least 150 people that showed up from coworkers, friends, family. I mean, Sharon comes from a very large family. I come from a very small family,
Yeah.
a much smaller family in comparison. But, just the amount of family that showed up on her side and our side was surprising. I mean, I saw relatives I didn't expect to show up, and just having that level of support, like I said, if you don't believe it, if you don't believe you got anybody there, just reach out because there's
Yeah.
guaranteed to be somebody who will help or be there for you. Because the amount of people that reached out for Ivy was unbelievable, and it was just such a blessing to have everybody there and just know that we could share her memory together. It was a beautiful moment. It was hard. I remember just holding Sharon. I had my arms wrapped around her shoulders, and I had my head on her shoulder. She was kind of leaning back on mine. We were just crying together, and it's a memory I'll cherish forever. I didn't get up and say anything. I couldn't. I
Yeah.
was so not only out of it from still being in the shock, but also just I didn't feel like I could say anything really worthwhile, or I felt I don't know. I was still going through very much of a guilt process at the
Yeah.
time because of that accident that was a week before,
Yeah.
and the thought that maybe if I had done something different, I was very much in a guilt state at that point. Thinking to myself, what if I had pushed Sharon to get a scan done
Yeah.
or some sort of scan done to see if there was a problem after the accident? Would things have been different? It's possible, but you know, at that moment, that's where my head was at, and I wasn't in a
Yeah.
good place at all. But I've since, developed a much stronger toolkit, and I think Ivy's still shown herself in a lot of ways throughout time to me. Even today, being in the shower, I saw the light just shine through the window. It was supposed to be a blizzard condition today, and just seeing this absolute beautiful ray of light come through the window when I was showering earlier just made me start crying because it was one of those things where, like Orion said, Ivy's just coming to say hi, and
Yeah.
I believe truly that maybe she does still show up here and there and show herself, in spirit,
Yeah.
but it's just hard because this existential crisis I'm going through constantly, like I said. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of all over the place with how I see her and how I try to be a parent to her still.
Yeah.
It's hard, but I keep trying my best moving forward. So
And that's, us being mortal people, we every day is just a time for us to improve ourselves, improve our relationships with the
yeah,
people we love. And not every day that is a day that we're perfect. Not every day is a day that we're terrible. We're
right.
constantly improving and constantly upward trends, I guess, would be a good way to
Yes.
put it.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Constant upward trend.
Now,
Yeah.
Ivy's birthday's coming up. She's
Yep.
going to be 7 years old.
7 years old on the 22nd.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. I was even
Yeah.
thinking about taking a day off just to go see her.
Yeah.
Thinking about it. Because I have to work that day. It's a Monday, but I'm hoping I can take off at least, and
Yeah. Take
I
off.
think my boss will let me at least take a couple hours just to go over and see her and say
Yeah.
hi and spend some time talking to her. Which I don't know if people that are listening, if lost children, if they talk to them or if they go see them and try talking to them. I think it's important.
Yeah.
You've got to talk to your children. I talk to her all the time.
Yeah.
And if she is listening somewhere, heaven forbid, if she is out there listening to me, I'm hoping that I can give her the best advice possible. But like you said, we're only mortal. We do the best we can. And I'm hoping that her seventh birthday is wherever she's at is going to be special to her. Okay. And it'll be special to us.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about getting back in touch with Sharon and seeing maybe if she wants to go together and maybe bring some flowers for her or something like that.
Yeah.
So
Well,
just cherish the memories.
well, it's birthdays for me at least. My thought as a father to my son, Birthdays are a wonderful time, but also it's a hard time.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
all the emotions resurface, all the memories resurface, both the good and the bad. So,
Hmm. Both the good and the bad. That's exactly right. And
yeah,
I think there's a way to cherish both.
yeah,
Um, you know,
yeah,
like I said with Ivy, it's a lot of the memories that I have of her from being in the cuddle cut with, you know, it's dark, but it's, I see her with the gray skin and the pale eyes, and at least I'm holding her and I'm seeing
yeah,
her there. It's important. And those are some of the darker thoughts, like you mentioned, the harder thoughts. But then you've also got the brighter thoughts, like seeing her in a park in my dreams with my son playing in a park.
yeah,
So it's a mix of both. I very much agree with that wholeheartedly.
yeah.
Wholeheartedly.
Matt, is there anything else that you would like to discuss on this portion of the?
You know what? I think I'm quite content right now.
Mm,
I think Ivy would be happy just knowing that her story was shared and
yeah,
by both myself and Sharon. So
yeah. It is very apparent the love that you have, the desire to be a better man because of how Ivy has touched you. So
yeah,
thank you so much for coming and sharing your beautiful daughter Ivy with us. Thank you.
thank you for having me so much. This has been such a blessing. Much love.
Well, thank you.